Okay, all right, friends, here we are. We're back. We had a relatively long break. Some of our number had to leave, and anyway, here we are. Millions of first-degree initiates, and perhaps on the seventh ray. The seventh ray is par excellence. Let's see, is everything running? Yes. Right. The seventh ray is par excellence the medium of relationship. Linking things together, especially the highest and the lowest. It brings together two fundamental aspects of spirit and matter, the two fundamental aspects of spirit and matter. It's kind of a horizontal relationship, but at the same time there's a great deal of group making and whole making. It's kind of a vertical relationship, but even on the horizontal level that exists as well. It relates soul and form, and where humanity is concerned, it relates soul and personality. So periods of deep integration, when much integration between soul and personality are possible, can be characterized by the seventh ray. Just think about Gemini and the seventh ray, linking soul and personality. And Gemini is one of those signs which has a lot to do with the first initiation, sort of going through the pillars of wisdom for the first time. In the first initiation, it makes the initiate aware of that relation, of the soul-personality relationship. It enables him to take advantage of this approaching duality. They're called the contracting poles. Not contrasting, but contracting poles. They approach each other, the soul and personality, under Gemini and the seventh ray. And by the perfecting of that contact, to produce upon the physical plane the emergence into manifestation of a new man. Now there we have the Uranus idea, right? Uranus and the new at the first initiation. So the new man in Christ, as it is said. Seventh ray has a lot to do with producing the new world because it's so Uranian in a way. At the first initiation, through the stimulation brought about by seventh ray energy, the personality of the initiate and the hovering overshadowing soul are consciously brought together. So this is the union of the opposites, the union of pairs of opposites. Seventh ray is contributing to that, and that is happening for the first time in a significant sense. They have been approaching for a long time, ever since the man reversed the wheel for the first time back in the fifth pedal, when he reoriented himself towards this new something that he begins to find within his consciousness, the higher of the pairs of opposites. The initiate then knows that he, for the first time, is for the first time a soul-infused personality. Well, not fully, right? Not yet. Not a fully soul-infused personality until the fourth degree. His task is now to grow into the likeness of what he essentially is throughout the personality. So it's a question of fusion, isn't it? He realizes that this is his potential and then takes 3 or 4 more initiations to make it happen. This development, he says, is demonstrated at the third degree, third initiation, that of transfiguration. And, we're told that there is, in the vehicles, 75% atomic matter by the time we reach the third initiation. And in terms of 100% atomic matter in the vehicles, I suppose that means the astral, the etheric, and that's a good question about whether it is so in the mental vehicle. Maybe it is after the astral body, after the egoic body is destroyed. 100% atomic matter in those vehicles, only at the fourth initiation. So when it talks about, is there full soul infusion? At the third degree, well, it's mostly, I would say about 75%, or for all practical purposes, soul infusion. But there's still something more that happens in terms of the power of the solar angel infusing the personality still between the third and fourth degree. The major function of this seventh ray is to bring together the negative and positive aspects of the natural process. And that's why it's connected with sex in a big way. And he says sex magic, but we try to interpret sex magic spiritually. It's also, negatively. A lot of seventh ray souls can get into that and use those particular energies for purposes that they are not. Whoopsie. Did I fail to press that? Or did it just stop? Okay, wait a second. 1, 2, 3. I guess I thought I did that. Okay, well anyway, some things, there's no one here except myself who can see if this light goes off. All right, because sometimes the battery is deficient, but it doesn't look like the battery is deficient, so I just missed a few minutes on that tape. Oh, right. So anyway, we're talking about the seventh ray medium of relationship, relating soul and personality. The approaching duality in Gemini can be brought together. That's one of the reasons Gemini governs the first initiation, not the only sign that does. The new man is created. Uranus is the planet of the new, and it rules through its seventh ray the first initiation. And at this first initiation, the personality of the initiate hovering and the hovering overshadowing soul, how interesting, are consciously brought together, but not fully. It's a partially soul-infused personality, partially. But at least the model is set for full soul infusion, which DK says occurs at the third degree. And I would like to say there's still more soul infusion that occurs following the third degree. Still more, I believe. His task is now to grow into the likeness of what he essentially is, and DK says this is demonstrated at least at the third degree, and maybe even more fully when you are. In other words, the egoic lotus is not fully unfolded at the third degree. It is quite unfolded, but the jewel in the lotus is not displayed. The 9 outer petals are displayed, but the factor of synthesis is not yet fully displayed. And there are 3 inner petals, and they are called by what name? And what color are they? Huh? Synthesizing petals, and their color is yellow. Bright, what is he called, lemon yellow or something of that nature, and they are not fully unfolded. At every initiation, one of the synthesis petals, DK tells us, is broken open to a degree and continues to unfold, but only at the 4th degree do they pop open completely, revealing the jewel in the lotus. So if the form of the soul, what we call the soul, still has some way to go, it tells me that there is further unfoldment of soul consciousness during that period between the 3rd and the 4th degree. And he also says another thing. He says the amount of learning is absolutely tremendous during the 3rd and the 4th degree. Huge amounts of assimilation of knowledge. That to me sounds like the synthesis petals. See? So if that is the case, there is still more soul unfoldment and soul infusion going on between the 3rd and the 4th degree. Okay, so the major function of the 7th ray is to bring together the negative and positive processes. So this is part of the mystery of electricity, which is the mystery of polarity and the relationship of the poles. It consequently governs the sex relationship of all forms. So there is a major control over that particular energy at the 1st degree, but it's not, the problem is not solved until the 4th degree, which is interesting. It seems to take a long time. We will understand the sex relationship more and more in terms, in occult terms, in terms of electricity, as we move towards that higher degree, and a lot less in terms of the animal processes under Mars. So in that respect, since the 7th ray is governing all of these sexual relationships, we can see that Uranus is, in fact, a fitting ruler for the sacral center, because it primarily gives the 7th ray. and yet the other planets involved, Mars, Venus, and Moon, also have some connection. It is the potency underlying the marriage relation, the seventh ray, and hence all these marriage ceremonies. Kind of interesting, you know. Marriage is not a casual thing. It's always, or so often, marked by some kind of ceremony or other, even if it's just civil. So marriage, seventh ray, ceremony, these things go together. And mating rituals and all those kinds of things. It is the potency underlying the marriage relation, and hence, as this ray comes into manifestation in this world cycle, we have the appearance of fundamental sex problems. He says the planetary logos is pretty much polarized at this present time. Well, he has a very strong sacral center, the planetary logos does. It's only getting stronger and stronger with the power of the seventh ray coming in. So he says that when the planetary logos raises a certain percentage of his sacral center energy into the solar plexus, that many of these sex problems will disappear, and especially crime surrounding sex. He says 75% disappearance of that type of crime. So here come these fundamental problems along the seventh ray line, and of course rebelling against the law at the same time, because rebellion against the law is ruled by Uranus in the early phases of its manifestation. So Uranus is the hierarchical ruler in Aries, whereas Saturn, the law, falls in Aries. Uranus and Aries being a very rebellious attitude, at least on the lower turn of the spiral, and we have the world today in the midst of a great rebellion with Uranus in Aries, and the desire to change the pattern of everything. So we have license, disturbance in the marriage relation, divorce, and the setting. Of course, he'll say we have divorce because we don't marry correctly. He'll say that in the future we don't marry properly. He'll say that we need to have the committee okay the marriage relationship in the future. People will make application, may we get married, and you'll have to prove why you should. Yes. All of this is the influence of the seventh ray on humanity in general. So it's not so much that at the first, by the time we reach the first initiation, some of these issues should be solved. He says humanity is working out the problem of sex in Libra. Disciples are working out their problem in Scorpio. So he relates sex to Libra, and he says right now humanity is in the middle of big decisions with respect to that. And DK says the problem is so bad, even the hierarchy doesn't even know where it will end. That's amazing, you know, and if we wish to call it a disturbing thought. But the powerful overcoming of the lower tendencies is given to the disciple who is working through the constellation Scorpio. So majority of people are found in Libra, and everything, you know, the seventh ray sex and everything is on everybody's mind all the time in terms of the masses of people, and more so during the Aquarian age at first, because Venus, which can indicate the sex issue, it is coming into the rulership of the last decanate through which people enter first. So the first 720 years of the Aquarian age is under Venus, and not under Saturn at all when it comes to the average people. So Saturn is what gives you a grip on all of this, and disciples are expected to have a grip on all of this. When it comes to Saturn in Scorpio, which is rapidly approaching, it's a tough place to have Saturn, because Saturn can suppress natural expression. It's like Christianity, you know, it's like saying Saturn in Scorpio, sex is bad. Okay, like that. But Saturn in Scorpio also gives you a chance to confront the dweller on the threshold and make serious business of that confrontation. So I think we'll see a lot of people getting very serious about handling their own vices and their own problems during the next 2.5 years when Saturn goes into Scorpio. Anyway, he's speaking of the general period in which we're passing, a fundamental disturbance, and he it sounds like he doesn't think divorce is such a great idea, but like I said, he said people get married for all the wrong reasons, and a true marriage means a union on all three levels, including the soul level, which makes more. So you'll have to prove to the community in the future why you should get married. And the community will either accept that or not. It's kind of interesting. It almost sounds like China, doesn't it, or something, you know? Anyway, the setting in motion of those forces will eventually produce a new attitude toward sex, and the establishing of those practices and attitudes and moral perceptions which will govern the relation between the sexes during the coming new age. So he says we're in a very bad situation right now. There's all kinds of deviation going on. People are justifying all kinds of things. It's just against the law, absolutely. But we live in a very individual age, and people want to do what they feel like doing. That's Uranus. On one level, Uranus is, I'll do what I want, you know, and who are you to tell me? And the law is made for others. So, but that is a much lower expression of Uranus than we can expect to emerge in the life of disciples who are working with Scorpio, in which Uranus is exalted. So there will be a triumph over the lower tendencies and a reordering of priorities. This is a tough problem, and our planetary logos is switching from the third ray, which also is strongly connected with the sacral center, onto the second ray into the solar plexus, and it will help. So many maladjustments are present at this time because we're simply ignorant about the situation. We don't know where we've been, we don't know where we're going, and eventually we will get it straight. We will get straightened out as far as I can see. I'm sure that all of us at some time or another have been into all kinds of things along the way, but eventually we will have to be known as initiates by what he calls our sanctified normality. Interesting words, which means holy normality. Normality made sacred, sanctified normality. It goes along with the seventh ray, and I think it has a very beautiful kind of meaning. Right now, it's a mess, and the human race is actually in danger on many fronts. So the hierarchy has when I was reading the Tibetan about the so-called sex problem, which is for everybody. It's not, you know, it's heterosexual, homosexual, everybody is has the problem. He really said, we don't know where it will end. We don't know. But we know that when these civilizations have fallen in the past, these civilizations were deeply involved in abuses of sex, which are sort of like a sin against the Holy Spirit, against the creative power. So we do have to get that straightened out very quickly, because simply indulging for the sake of pleasure is not what will lead humanity out of its present impasse. So it's a serious issue, and the nice thing about seventh ray is it does straighten things out. You know, seventh ray is that ray which really produces alignment with the higher pattern. Then draw a line from that which is without to that which is within, and see the plan take form. That's the integration formula for the seventh ray. And if the law is above, for the seventh ray, the law will be expressed below. So we can count on the sanctification of God-intended normality, and I say the plan the planetary logos has, which will come along eventually after the many abuses are exposed. The abuses are getting exposed tremendously. This is part of the church cleaning house. You know, you have only to realize what, I mean, it's just incredible what people have been into. And all of that has to be swept clean, along with peace and sharing, before the Christ can return to earth. The first initiation is therefore closely related to this problem. And what it means is that the average sexual license that pre-first degree initiates are involved in, many of them, has to be brought under law and order and control. So in this sense, Saturn is very needed, and Uranus, which gives you the ideal pattern, has to be applied below. People are very sensitive about this subject because this is an age when you can do what you please. However, The law is the law. And like I've said, my old teacher used to say, and I told you, nobody breaks the law breaks them. And humanity will be broken on this problem if we cannot get it straightened out. I mean, well, I don't even want to get into it. You know what it is. It's just really heavy. And so many human beings are being made into slaves, into sex slaves. And there's even a religion which says it's okay to make others into sex slaves if they do not believe in the God you believe in. So that's so primitive. It's so primitive that it just has to be destroyed. Anyway, it will be, because the new ray is coming in, and those old patterns will be broken by the imposition of the interior pattern that is God intended. It'll just be very tough, and it'll just be a lot of suffering and a lot of friction and a lot of war and a lot of conflict, while those pernicious thought forms are destroyed. Because you can't call them anything but pernicious. They're just right out of the Black Lodge. That's where they come from. And it just harkens back to ancient Atlantean and Lemurian days, when again you could do what you pleased, and no God was going to tell you different. Because the whole problem is that humanity has deviated from the God-given laws that were given 18.5 million years ago, when the solar angels came and consulted with Venus and said, here are the laws. These are perfect laws. Live up to them. And then humanity deviated from these laws. Of course, the Black Lodge from the previous solar system did a lot to encourage that deviation. Because if man obeyed the law, then man would in fact excel in initiation and become a fully realized spiritual being, which would not be healthy for the Black Lodge. So there was a definite interference. The seventh ray also governs the sacral center and the sublimation of its energy into the throat, or that higher creative process, and that is really Uranian. That is why I find Uranus as such an appropriate ruler of the sacral center, especially around the time of the first initiation, when you have to go from being procreative into being creative, which doesn't mean you shouldn't have children, but the whole idea is, again, my old teacher used to say, there comes a time in the life of every spiritual person, or man or woman, whatever, when he must stop creating his own kind and begin creating himself. So this is obviously a higher Leo idea. This guy had Leo on his descendant. So it's not just procreating, it's recreation. It's recreation of your own self. We sometimes call it recreation, but, recreation. We have to, of course, there is also a tendency of more advanced and intellectual people to stop having children, which would be death for the race. We have to watch that, because that's so selfish. And the Western civilizations are terribly guilty of this at the present moment. So you have the possibility of souls coming in, and they are aborted all over the place because of free choice. Okay, but there's responsibility here, because what it means is the more advanced people will not be able to have children. And when they can't have children, who has the children? And what is the result? And how will the children be raised? Not with the full advantages of all of Western illumined civilization. They will be raised otherwise. And then what will happen in civilization? If this is a battle between the higher and lower centers of humanity, then what will happen? So we really need to straighten out this whole thing to make sure that we're with the law. Otherwise, all the gains we have made in 500 years in Western civilization will go down the tubes, and we will be reinitiated into the earth, just the way DK warns in the Taurus chapter. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox now. All right. This ray is therefore setting in motion a period of tremendous creative activity. This creative activity will be the new Renaissance, and the fourth ray will cooperate with it. And as we read the other day, it will make the great cathedrals look like children's building blocks compared to what is coming, both on the material plane, especially because of the seventh ray, and through the stimulation of the sex life of all peoples, and in the three worlds, the stimulation brought about when soul and form are consciously related. So this ray is setting in motion a period of tremendous creativity activity on the material plane through the stimulation of the sex life of all peoples, but also the elevation of that sex life, and in the three worlds through the stimulation brought about when soul and form are consciously related. In other words, who is the genius? Who is the genius? What is the genius? Yes, you have something that you want to say, Anne? The throat center. Throat center. Or into the higher creative, yeah, this, Ajna Center, yeah, Ajna Center. Yeah, that is involved with art. Ajna Center, higher psychism, higher creative center, yeah. Okay, you as a soul are a genius already. And especially you are a genius when your fifth petal is unfolding or nearly open. The expressions of genius are found through the expression of the Leonian fifth petal. So this period of unfoldment around the first initiation, because look, first initiation is where this petal really does unfold completely. You cannot be a first degree initiate unless your fifth petal is completely unfolded. Now let me show you about genius and the fifth petal. If I can, all I have to do is find it. And it's very interesting because it says it's going to correspond with this tremendous creativity we're going to have with the new Renaissance, with the seventh ray and the fourth ray. The display of genius is coming. It's in Education in the New Age. Genius, petal. Oops, genius. This is not too good. Genius, fifth. How about that? Fifth. Okay, the fifth ray, fifth is French intellect. Fifth ray can bring, and oh, well, I'm telling you, that's where it is. That's where it is. How can I do that? I have to go searching for it. But I don't have, you'll just have to believe me. It has to do with the unfoldment of the fifth petal, or maybe genius says, I don't know, let's just take a look. Genius, or genius says, let's see, intelligentsia, geniuses, etc. I wonder if I erase this. You know, I tend to do that. Okay, let me just look over here. Maybe I can find it. Because it's so interesting. It's in Education in the New Age. And, oh, it probably says the second petal of the second tier. It probably doesn't say fifth petal at all. That's probably it. Okay, you know, sometimes DK has a different word for these things. So let's just look up the word genius. And maybe, you see how slow my computer is? It just is protesting. All right, Genius. Genius and the petals. By the way, if you don't have my Alice Bailey extracts, I'm happy to give them to you. It's about 35 gigabytes of extracts. Creative work can be carried forward when two of the knowledge petals of the egoic lotus are unfolded. A man can produce, through knowledge energy, something on the physical plane which will be expressive of the soul's creative power. That's the first two petals. When two of the love petals are also unfolded, then a genius makes his appearance. No wonder I couldn't find it. The genius makes his appearance when two of the love petals are unfolded. This is a technical piece of information for those students who are studying the science of the ageless wisdom, but it is of no value to those who do not recognize symbology or the fact of the higher ego or soul. So, first initiation, the fifth petal completely unfolded. Second initiation, the sixth petal completely unfolded, with the seventh and eighth petal being unfolded. The appearance of genius when the two first love petals are unfolded, including, of course, the fifth petal. So you can imagine that many geniuses will emerge at this time of the first initiation, many taking the first initiation and therefore unfolding the petals that are needed for the expression of genius, plus the great creative ray, the fourth ray, and the seventh ray linking the highest and the lowest coming in together. So we can expect good times when it comes to creativity. We just have to get through this mess, at the present moment, which is such a cross current of sixth ray going out and seventh ray coming in. It's just like very, very turbulent. That's why people like ourselves have to stand for what the teaching says and not fight against it because of our own personal preferences. My favorite is, oh yeah, Alice Bailey wrote that. Not the Tibetan. Alice Bailey wrote that. Why? Because I disagree with it. That's why. Well, you've heard it all the time, haven't you? All the time. Yeah.
One of the exoteric interpretations of an Aquarian is that he's a genius.
As a genius, yes. Aquarius is a genius. So this is the age of Leo Aquarius, Aquarius Leo especially. The planet of genius is Uranus. Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius and the hierarchical ruler of Leo, veiled by the sun. So all kinds of Uranian types are going to appear. They will be crazy and they will be geniuses too. If you have green hair that's a foot tall, this is Uranus at work. In other words, it's called deviation. Now, deviation can be either absurd and contra-evolutionary, or deviation can be archetypal and fundamentally related to the world of being. And when that is the case, then you have the possibility of bringing heaven to earth, because Uranus is called the heavenly one. It is the planet called the heavenly one, meaning it has a tremendous capacity to bring heaven to earth. But at the same time, you can go nuts with Uranus. Everything that's good and normal and protects humanity, you can just go off and do something weird, So sometimes, I look at all the body piercing that's going on. Of course, that's very Plutonic in a way. It's a combination of Uranus and Pluto together, this kind of anti-life movement, if you will. It's very dark, it's very goth, and all the rest of it. It's just an abuse, but it is related to Scorpio, and it's related to Neptune and Uranus and Pluto, used in ways by people who don't know any better. And we second ray types, whether monad or soul, we have to help people know better. That's what we have to do. They have to see the plan. And seeing the plan, they can at least measure themselves against this fantastic vision and see whether they want to keep doing what they're doing. It's a very big responsibility, this educational responsibility. Okay. Genius and the petals. Okay, so tremendous creative activity is coming, but creation is for good or for bad. Hopefully it will be for good, because he promises us a great renaissance coming. I wonder what it would be like for Bach to reincarnate and have all of the computers at his disposal and the best sounds from all the best orchestras of the world. And pretty soon we're going to be, I think, I wish it would happen now while I'm still alive, but at least in this incarnation, but the time will come when we will be able to choose any opera singer we want and have that opera singer sing our own music, or compose a choir which will get the best sounds that have ever been, and that choir, made up of the greatest singers of the ages, will sing your music. Of course, I have a special interest in this. But, we can already do this with instruments. We can take some of the finest orchestras, they record the samples, and we use their sounds to create orchestral music, and you cannot tell the difference between the music created in that way and music that is actually performed by a very expensive orchestra. Of course, in a way, some people who are connoisseurs, they can tell the difference. But the day will come when they can't. Do any of you ever have old recordings like from 1900 or 1910 that were, gramophone recordings? Did your parents have any of those things with the big big horn, and all that, and you crank it. My dad had some of those, and I would listen to these things. They sound awful, but at the time, they sounded terrific. People said, "Can you believe it? We're actually hearing what someone sang, a recording." And Rudolf Steiner, he said, "Well, don't listen to that stuff because it doesn't have any soul." Well, okay. What I think is that the soul in it was a question of technology, because the technology has gotten so fantastic, Venus and the fifth ray and all the rest, that you have marvelous acoustics now, which are recordings of the best orchestras, and they are totally soul satisfying. So just imagine what will happen when our acoustics increase even more and we can have the representation of the greatest voices singing whatever we want them to sing, and choirs of the very best singers in the world that are made through technology. It doesn't mean that people will stop singing. It just means that the level of art will increase tremendously with the technological representation of art. So I'm looking for a time when the fourth ray, the fifth ray, and the seventh ray all combine, bringing it into manifestation, linking heaven and earth, the fourth ray for creative beauty, and the fifth ray for supreme technology to bring all of this into perfect form so we can appreciate this in an unadulterated manner without interference and noise and all the rest of it. It's going to be supreme. And I think we're going to have to look to Germany and Austria to give us a lot of this, because they both have very heavy fourth ray and fifth ray. In other words, beauty and technological representation of beauty. Okay, so going on here, both on the material plane and through the stimulation of the sex life of all people, that's going on. But when you stimulate the sex life of all people, you also have the chance of raising the energy into creative life, the throat center and the ajna center as well. Okay, the first major proof that humanity, through the medium of the majority of its advanced people, has undergone the first initiation, will be the appearance of a cycle of entirely new creative art. So, the Christ will appear, and that will be the signal that humanity has taken the first initiation. But it's fantastic. The two practically artistic rays in the world, are ray 7, ray 4. Both are expected in a big cycle very soon. So the appearance of an entirely new creative art, it obviously hasn't happened yet, but you can already hear things moving in that direction. DK tells us about a whole new kind of singing that is coming in that will replace solar plexus singing. And I think when we see what people can do with harmonic singing, we already see the harbinger of that type of expression. He also says that the new creativity will especially first show itself in literature, poetry, and the use of the word. That will be the first area in which this comes in. We seem to be talking about the fourth ray, but let's remember that in this seventh ray chapter, the seventh ray is a lover of beauty and the creator of practical beauty on the physical plane in manifestation. This creative urge will take forms which will express the new incoming energies. Just as the period governed by the sixth ray has culminated in a world wherein men work in great workshops and factories to produce a plethora of objects men deemed needful for their happiness and well-being, which means the desire body out of control, plus the fifth ray producing all these objects. So in the seventh ray cycle, we shall see men engaged on an even larger scale in the field of creative art. And not only that, we will have, because of the fifth ray, the leisure in which to do it. Because that's one of the great contributions of the fifth ray coming. It will give people actually time to create. Creativity, Leo, first initiation, throat center, ajna center, Venus, all of these things are coming. And we have to be optimistic about them, but live through the period of turbulence when the sixth ray people want to hold on to everything they've had before and prevent the seventh ray from materializing its full potential. And this is, I like this, devotion to objects will eventually be superseded by the creation of that which more truly expresses the real. Ugliness and materiality will give place to beauty and reality. What a statement. Ugliness and materiality will give place to beauty and to reality, and this in the coming seventh ray age. Our problem with the sixth ray is that desire is blind, and that people get one-pointedly devoted to many things which are of lesser value. We have, people are pursuing madly what they want, whether or not it is really valuable. So one of the important things now is a great change in values in our civilization. How does that come about? Usually painfully, I mean, people lose what they have and discover they didn't need it anyway. Okay. On a large scale, humanity has already been led from darkness to light, and the light of knowledge fills the land. In the period which lies ahead and under influencing radiation of the seventh ray, humanity will be led from the unreal to the real. This, the first initiation, makes possible for the individual and will make possible for the mass of men. Okay, so in this particular case, what is the real and what is the unreal? On this particular level, we're talking about the real and the unreal. It's very simple. The soul is real. The personality is unreal. Very simple. The sun is real. The moon is unreal. It represents illusion. I'm talking symbolically now. So what a promise. What a great time coming, Of course, the hierarchy foresees all the dangers. It says we're going to have a lot of integrated personalities running around. This in itself is a situation which will have to be handled. Well, you know what I mean, because there's that sense of power, the sense of who I am, and the cooperation is an issue. But fortunately, it's the age of Aquarius, so these cooperative magnetic energies will draw us together, and for the first 720 years of the age of Aquarius, we will be forced together. Why do I say that? What planet makes me say that? Why do I say that? Saturn in Aquarius? See, in other words, if sharing is the issue, there has to be enough to go around. Saturn forces economy on the group. So according to the law of economy in the third ray, in the seventh ray age, people will have to do with what they need and not only with what they want. And we will have to be cooperating with each other under the law in order to make this happen. So this is not an easy age we are coming into. You know the song about the age of Aquarius? It makes everything sound rosy. You know the song? From the musical Hair, or whatever it's called? The age of Aquarius, harmony and understanding, blah, blah, blah. Jupiter aligns with Mars, blah, blah, blah. And Dane Rudyard tried to cut through that glamour. He said, really, the age of Aquarius will be the age of management. Doesn't sound very glamorous, does it? Not very appealing. The age of management will actually have to clean things out and run things right, which the seventh ray will help us do. But it sounds like there's going to be a lot of law involved in this, of having to conform to the law for the sake of the group. I do believe that, what shall I call socialism? I believe in meritocracy. It's a form of socialism. It means that the people who are best fit for certain jobs should have those jobs, and that there is a hierarchy to be respected. Now, Aquarius sometimes gets involved with what's called the Australians call it the tall poppy syndrome. That means if your flower is a little taller than someone else's, along comes a knife and whacks you off. We don't allow excellence because everybody's the same here. But meritocracy is just the opposite. It just appreciates reincarnation. It appreciates the idea of souls who are at different stages of evolution, a great division of labor, a great pyramid of life, And it's a realistic view of human evolution. And it means that we have to have the best people in control and not necessarily the most popular people or the people who can sway the crowd through demagoguery. This, of course, will require some understanding of the spiritual nature of humanity. Yes? Uh-huh. Form groups and put groups in specific places to meet the challenges. Then the task is done, the group can dissolve and move on. I believe the group will offer many solutions, and the question is, in the future age, does the group even have to go there? I mean, maybe. Maybe the group has to go there, but maybe also just tuning in with the energy, if the group is focused there, solutions can come. Yeah, I believe the group holds the solution. Obviously, if people will say, oh, if you believe in groups, you're a socialist. Well, what is socialism? I believe in a socialistic meritocracy, which is really the antithetical of socialism today. Socialism means, for many people today, that just because you're a member of the group, you don't have to earn anything and everything will be given to you. And that's what I think a lot of people object against. But I believe in a type of socialism where there is intense striving for the constant elevation of the human individual, making the group better all the time. But of course, the whole idea of reincarnation has to come into that, otherwise no one will do it. Seventh ray energy is the energy needed to bring order out of chaos and rhythm to, excuse me, there's a fly here. That fly really likes me. Order out of chaos and rhythm to replace disorder. I have, wait a second, hold on, 510, 4 pages, yes. Meritocracy? Meritocracy? It is a society organized on the basis of merit or excellence. Merit. The Tibetans and the Buddhists are always talking about merit. Oh, that deed gained you merit, or you lost merit by doing that. M-E-R-I-T. Merit. Merit. Yeah. This word. Merit. And meritocracy. There's all kinds of ways of ruling people: dictatorship, democracy, fascism, socialism, oligarchy, plutocracy. All of these different ways exist. What's the best way of organizing human society? Well, everybody writes their own utopia and tries to figure that out. With Plato, it was a meritocracy in which the highest authority in the land was the so-called philosopher king. It's like a picture of the hierarchy itself. So everybody has the chance to be the ruling class, but you have to prove that you actually have merit, ability, quality, excellence. You have to prove it. You have to prove your excellence. Now, a lot of socialism today, you don't have to prove anything. Just because you're there, you get what you want. That won't work. So reincarnation will prove to people that what you are, you have earned. In other words, as you stand, you have made yourself as you are. In other words, you can't blame it on mom. You can't blame it on dad. You are what you have made yourself to be over many, many lifetimes. And therefore, you hold in your power, in your hands, the power of being more than you are now if you'll just work at it. So this should inspire people, instead of being lazy, to really begin to work on themselves, to improve their energy system, their intelligence, their power to love, their willpower. Work on every aspect of your system strenuously. And then society will be better and better and better. This is what's called meritocracy. Yeah. Okay, so crisis in Denmark, more women in the country, in the companies, maybe. Shall it be done by law, or shall it be free decision? Or there should be like a goal. We have something called affirmative action in the United States, which is like that, and it's now being severely challenged. Um, the affirmative action means that we have to have so many minority people in specific universities and so forth in high jobs, and there's like a quota, this many have to be there. And what happens, of course, is that some of the people who are in the majority are much better, but they can't get in because the quota has to be made, has to be reached to bring so many minority people in, regardless of whether they have the ability or not. So it's a very tough problem. And what is it? Yes, maybe you could have a compromise. Well, maybe there could be a goal. But the point is, unless you change people's hearts, how are you going to legislate? They'll just look for ways around it, you know? It's just like hierarchy saying, look, we could step in and make everything right, and you wouldn't learn a thing, and the minute we step back, you'd reproduce all of your old problems. So it's the same way to a degree with some of these actions where you legislate, there must be so many here. Although I tell you, it might work because women are very qualified, you know. It might work. Hmm. It would gain, you say. Yeah. So you worked for the U.S. company, IBM, and so forth, and so you know, what do you know? How it works. You know the game. Well, let's just say women have to rise, and the state of women all over the world has to be elevated to a level where there is finally Libran equality. So that's the direction of things, I'm sure. And probably there'll be a whole lot less war when that happens, because women will be representing Venus more than Mars, archetypally. It has to come. The question is, how will it come? I'm not the best one to ask, but right. That's a fantastic idea. If the companies who have a better mixture of men and women have a better bottom line, then everyone will want to do it because they'll be motivated via the third aspect. This is called intelligent, enlightened self-interest. This is what the third aspect motivation is called. You do good things for the wrong reasons, but even that's okay. It's better than not doing good things at all. I want to finish this today. Yes, yes. Seventh ray energy is needed to bring order out of chaos and rhythm to replace disorder. It is this energy which will bring in the new world order for which all men wait. Well, a lot of people hate those words right now. They hate the idea of the new world order. They think it means control by some elite or maybe communism or who knows what. They don't like those words, even though the new order of the centuries was Master R's words, as the Count de Saint-Germain, especially as Francis Bacon. And it's even on the dollar bill of the United States. He's behind all that, the new order of the centuries. It will restore the ancient landmarks, there's a Masonic term, indicate the new institutions and forms of civilization and culture which human progress demands, and nurture the new life and new states of consciousness which advanced humanity will increasingly register. Do you notice how often in this discussion of the seventh ray, the word new is being used? This is such a Uranian thing. The urge to improve conditions, the seventh ray is associated, interestingly, with the new. At least in the way DK talks about it, it's also associated with the old, crustified, traditional, non-changing patterns which we have to break down. There's almost two sides to the seventh ray. In reinventing all the patterns, or just, well, we've always done it this way, this is our tradition, we always do, both go together. We have to deal with both sides of this seventh ray. Nothing can arrest this activity. All that is happening today as men search for the new ways, for organized unity, very Jupiterian word, and peaceful security, that's Venus and Saturn, is being implemented through the incoming ray of order or ceremonial magic. So what are men searching for? organized unity, peaceful security. These are connected with the seventh ray. And look how he brings these ideas together. The white magic of right human relations cannot be stopped. What a brilliant bringing together of the ideas. Right human relations involving the proper organization of society where love can express, and white magic also of the seventh ray. The white magic of right human relations cannot be stopped. And why does he call right human relations white magic? What do you think? The white magic of right human relations. What is white magic supposed to do? What is the purpose of white magic? To create what? Creation, yes. Create what? Yes, well, yes. Everything the divine plan intends to have happen, the white magician is responsible for creating. So he must be saying here that when you get people together in the right way, through right human relations, the divine plan will be able to be creatively implemented. That a whole new creativity will be released in humanity, and it will make many more of us white magicians who can bring through the divine plan onto the physical plane. So I think this is a very arresting term, the white magic of right human relations. I think, I've noticed it before, but now I feel like I'm noticing it for the first time. The white magic of right human relations, meaning magic will happen when we relate to each other in the right way. And of course it does, doesn't it? You get people in these bands, in these teams, and these as actors in a play, and they say, "Hey, something happened. Magic happened. When we got these people together, it was real chemistry, right?" So you get the right people together, related in the right way, and magic happens, meaning they invoke, even if they don't know it, they invoke something higher, and it comes. So right human relations is invocative of the plan. That's what I want to say. Right human relations is invocative of the plan. I'm going to say that. Right human relations is invocative of the divine plan. It must inevitably demonstrate effectively, because the energy of the seventh ray is present, and the Lord of the ray is cooperating with the Lord of the world to bring about the needed, and here are the words, reforming. That is such a Uranian word. You need a new form? Reform. The interesting thing about Uranus, if you want to find verbs that relate to the planet Uranus and to the seventh ray, just put RE and a dash. Redo, reform, rebuild, re. It means to build anew, to do something anew. That's the seventh ray, that's Uranus. Soul-infused personalities acting under qualities, acting under this ray influence will create the new world, express the new qualities, and institute those new regimes and organized modes of creative activity, brilliant, which will demonstrate the new livingness and the new techniques of living. Why livingness? Why alive? Because the seventh ray is the prana and the etheric body, which gives us vitality. And the seventh ray connects with the cosmic ethers, bringing down the livingness of the cosmic ethers into our dense personality life. So this is quite a powerful affirmation of the importance of the seventh ray, isn't it? Okay, sorry. It is the distortion of these seventh ray ideals and the prostitution of this incoming energy to serve the unenlightened and selfish ambitions of greedy men, which has produced those totalitarian systems which today so terribly imprison the free spirit of men. And that is seventh ray too. Around here we have a totalitarian system. We all do things the same way, and that is seventh ray too. There's no room for individuality. And not only that, he says something really scary. He says the Black Lodge disciples are better organized than those of the White Lodge. And they are effective and faster, and they get faster material results, and they really respect organization. And you get into the White Lodge disciples, and they're all over the place, disrespecting the principle of organization. Now, some of that is ending, but he basically says they're very well organized, very disciplined. This is the story about how Madame Roerich, she must have been tremendously courageous. At night, she visited a meeting of the Black Lodge. This is the story. And so, being quite a brave person, they were highly disciplined, highly organized. She went there, and she assured them that they would be defeated. And then she left. Madame Roerich, Helena Roerich, the author of the Agni Yoga books, did she have a little first ray or what? So I'm just thinking about what that would take. You go to this place on the astral plane called Marakara. Mara, the Buddha fought Mara, the home of Mara, the home of illusion, on the astral plane. You go in there, and you talk to all these enemies of humanity who are terribly powerful, and you assure them of their defeat. And then you leave unscathed. Most people, they'd eat for dinner, if they go there, and somehow she was able to do that. I just blows my mind when I think about what kind of courage that must have taken, because, fear and terror and hatred and all the rest, they have all that down pat. To sum up what I have said, I'm just doing my best with the first initiation here, because, we may not quite be able to finish this. We'll see. Because we have to knock off the second initiation tomorrow. I know, I'm just being facetious, Obviously, it takes years to study these things. To sum up what I've said, the energy of the seventh ray is the potent agent of initiation when taken on the physical plane, that is, during the process of the first initiation. So it really induces the first initiation, which is taken on the physical plane, and during the coming years, the first initiation and even the second will be taken publicly on the physical plane. And who will be the initiator? The externalized Christ will be the initiator, because he is the initiator. He is the initiator of the first and second initiation, and he will give it publicly on the physical plane. Now, won't that be something to attend? It will be given Masonically. It will be given in the church. Maybe it will be given even in the esoteric schools. It's too early to tell how it will be given. Its effects upon humanity will be, A, to bring about the birth of the Christ consciousness among the masses of intelligently aspiring human beings. Okay, the birth of the Christ consciousness will not be brought about in everybody, but generally more goodwill will be available, until by the end of the Aquarian age under Venus, we will have the era of intelligent brotherhood for the last 720 years of the Aquarian age. So the effects of this first initiation: first, to bring about Christ consciousness. I suppose if you have the Christ standing in front of you, you might have some incentive. B, to set in motion certain relatively new evolutionary processes which will transform humanity, the world disciple, into humanity, the world initiate. So new methods will appear which will transform the many disciples, and thus humanity, the world disciple, into becoming the world initiate. There will be enough human beings who are initiate to call humanity the world initiate instead of world disciple. That will be an amazing result. C, to establish in a new and intelligible manner the ever-existent sense of relationship, and thus bring upon the physical plane right human relations. The seventh ray, operating in the Venus decanate of the Aquarian age, will see the fulfillment of right human relations, and already will begin to work on it right away. The agent of this is goodwill. Goodwill is, what's the old saying? What is goodwill? You know it. It's not the will to good, but says goodwill is blank, blank, blank. You know this. L-I-A. I know it's English. English words. L-I-A? Goodwill is? You'll remember it now. I know you will. Love in action. Goodwill is love in action. Right? Remember? Okay. Okay, the agent of this is goodwill, a reflection of the will to good of the first divine aspect. Of this first ray of will or purpose, goodwill is the reflection. The will to good reflected in goodwill. Right human relations will prevail. This will be the result of the first initiation taken by many. Okay, moving. D, to readjust negative and positive relationships. And today this will be carried forward primarily in connection with the sex relation and marriage. A readjustment of the male-female relationship, and this will bring about, under Libra, very strong Uranian changes in the sex relation and in marriage. Like I said before, if you have to ask permission of the community to get married, is this socialism or what? Who's in charge? Who's got the authority? It sounds like the authority has been transferred to the community rather than just the individual. This doesn't mean you can't relate to somebody, but marriage will imply certain social obligations and responsibilities, which is different from just getting together with somebody and having a relationship. Yes? The plan? Okay, so let me see if I'm trying to, my ears get a little bit plugged up. So now let me hear it again. The souls that incarnate together. So the possibility of marriage will be greater. He says you must marry your equal. This is so Libran, isn't it? He says if you marry, you should be at relatively the same stage of evolution, and you should be compatible physically, emotionally, and mentally, and have the same spiritual objectives. That doesn't mean you necessarily have to have the same ray, okay? But this whole idea of equality and parity, see, where do you find the person who is with you, your equal, and with whom you can form a cooperative union which is of benefit to the community? This is the thing. We're going to have to prove in marriage. In any relationship, you can just relate to whom you please. But in a marriage, we have to prove that we are beneficial to the community. In other words, and we will tell, this is in Psych 1, we will have to tell the community and the judges of the community, Libra again, why we should be married. We have to justify our marriage. Well, maybe you're looking for the astrological formula for such a thing. I couldn't say. I could only say that from the ray perspective, the evolutionary perspective, and probably from some astrological, it doesn't mean that you never will fight with your wife, or your husband. The superficial external stuff that sometimes astrology shows, those will not be important. But some fundamental compatibility, mostly based on equality of evolution in the various vehicles, this will be required. And of course, clairvoyance, who can see this stuff, will also be required. To really, and those who know karma will also be required. Even in the new schools, we will be examined according to our karma to see whether we get in or not. And we will have to follow or take, and here are the words, a drastic entrance examination in order to get into the new schools. So the standards are getting higher and higher. More and more under Saturn in a certain sense. Yes, Eric. New way of dating each other on the net. Is this proof this action started? Well, yes, comparison is going on the net to try to see whether people are really suitable to each other. Yes, I think it's a very air sign, Libran, intelligent thing to do. And not only that, who's a member of a group? All over the world, there are millions and millions of people, and they can find each other even though geographically remote and never see each other in their whole life, and they will be now a concentrated group of the same quality. So the possibility of finding someone who is more like yourself and more along the same line has increased astronomically with the net. Yeah, a bar. I never did go to a bar, but how was it? Anyway, in the old days, you went to a bar or wherever. Look, the chances of running into someone who is really suited to you in the old days. You see, the fifth ray has helped relationships so much. I never thought of this before, but Venus is ruled by the fifth ray. Venus is the planet of love and marriage, and the fifth ray is making this ever more possible. But I want to assure you that even on the internet, mistakes can be made. In other words, I've seen some examples where 1 week or 1 month the person said, "Oh, this person is perfect for me," perfect, and then they get together, and after a couple of weeks, no. Yeah. Well, the old definition by Samuel Johnson of he says he defines a second marriage. You know who Samuel Johnson was? Dr. Johnson, famous English dictionarist and literary wit, and he used to be in the taverns all the time, and everyone would gather around him because he was so brilliant and so funny and all the rest. He said a second marriage is the triumph of hope over experience. Anyway, try again. Try again. If at first you don't succeed, try again. Okay, so anyway, the adjustment of these relations. Another thing, what are we looking at here? That it's happening, oh yes, the effects of the seventh ray and initiation upon humanity, okay? To intensify human creativity and thus bring in the new art as a basis for the new culture and as a conditioning factor in the new civilization. So it sounds like a very cultural time, and we all know many seventh ray people are highly cultured. Master Moria defines culture as this. This is culture to him. It is cult ur. He says, and ur is light. It is the cult of light. That is culture, or the cultivation of the light. Number F, to reorganize world affairs and so initiate the new world order. This is definitely in the realm of ceremonial magic, and imagine international relations governed on the principle of right human relations, right rhythm. Right now it's just chaos, it's selfish, it's me over you, it's my nation over yours. But we are, under the avatar of synthesis, being forced together. Interesting. The avatar of synthesis is overshadowing the planetary logos, and will be overshadowing the Christ, and he will bring these things together, so we cannot escape merely into selfishness and separatism. Okay, the stimulation of this seventh ray will, in relation to the individual initiate, so we looked at it in the sense, right? So now in relation to the individual initiate, bring into being upon the mental plane a widespread and recognized relation between the soul and mind. This is very interesting. The seventh ray and the fifth ray, lords, work very closely together. The ray of mind and the ray of synthesis and union, the seventh ray, they work closely together. So soul and mind will come together, and what will happen is that the dotted line on the mental plane will, if not disappear, at least in the case of many people, this dotted line will begin to be much more permeable, and we will see here that it is not a firm line between the lower mind and the higher mind. The soul is on the higher mind plane, and the normal mind is here, and there will be a much greater permeability between them. We will be moving towards the idea that three minds unite. B, produce a measure of order in the emotional processes of the initiate, thus aiding the preparatory work for the second initiation. What has to happen at the second initiation in terms of the emotional body? Control it, get it under control. So the chaotic responses of the emotional body, which are so common to so many people, will be brought under regulation. And maybe even the star Regulus will help us do that. He says there's a lot more occultism in those names than we realize. Okay, so seventh ray people, I've noticed that they usually have pretty disciplined emotions. They're not the kind for the wild emotional outbursts which sometimes affect others. This initiation will enable the initiate upon the physical plane to establish certain service relationships, to learn the practice of elementary white magic, not necessarily the highest thing, but at least some of it, and to demonstrate the first stage of a truly creative life. This is the individual. So the element of where to serve, how to serve, with whom to serve, and service orientation during Aquarius, which is the age of service, will be facilitated through this seventh ray. And we will know how to make our service practical on the physical plane. And we will become elementary white magicians, which means that we'll be able to take the thoughts of the soul and make them real, relatively speaking, and we'll be able to demonstrate the new creative life, which is really create in line with the soul and make the soul's ideals real. Ideas and ideals. Sounds good, doesn't it? He's not going to say all this about the sixth ray, is he? When are we planning to incarnate? Yes, well, this time is with us right now. The seventh ray has been in incarnation since 1675. And by the time the Aquarian age begins in earnest in 2117, virtually 2025, there will be so many seventh ray souls in incarnation, and the seventh ray will be very powerful because the sixth ray influence will have disappeared entirely by the year 2130. And the Piscean influence will have disappeared entirely by the end of the 21st century. So we might as well, we'll be incarnating at that time. How many lives are you planning to have during the Aquarian age? Quick. None? You're all finished? Last incarnation? The rest of them. That's right. That's interesting. I'm planning to have the rest of my lives during the age of Aquarius. Meaning by the time it's all over, I'll be a master, right? Okay. As far as the individual initiate is concerned, the effect of the seventh ray energy in his life is potent in the extreme. This is easily realized owing to the fact that his mind and his brain are conditioned. There we go again. See that? This is easily realized owing to the fact that his mind and his brain are conditioned by the seventh ray at the time that the initiatory process is consciously taking place. Now, he may have a seventh ray mind, or it just may be that due to the kind of energies released by the Christ or the initiator at that time, it will be seventh ray energy which conditions his mind and his brain. In the earlier reference that we read, we learned that you can have at this time the seventh ray mind, which will make it very susceptible to the ray of the new age. So I think we will have to look increasingly for the appearance of seventh ray minds during the coming times, when the seventh ray gets stronger. The effect of this upon the mental plane is similar to that seen on a much larger scale in the planet, for it was this ray energy which the planetary logos utilized when he brought together the major dualities of spirit and matter at the commencement of his creative work. Now, was this the creation of humanity, or was this actually when the planet was brought into existence? Probably when the planet was brought into existence. The two aspects of the mind, the lower concrete mind, and the soul, the son of mind, become more closely related and enter eventually into a conscious, recognized association on the astral plane. Into a conscious, recognized association on the astral plane. It is the seventh ray which restores order within the astral consciousness. So let's just say we need our mind to control our emotions. We admit that, right? If we don't have at least a little bit of mental focus, and maybe a lot, we're not going to control our emotions, are we? So we need our mind, and we don't just need any old mind. We need a soul-infused mind to help us really bring the right kind of order, reflecting the love energy on the astral plane. It is the seventh ray which restores order within the astral consciousness and on the mental plane. It is this influence which produces creativity, the organizing of the life, and the bringing together within the head of the lower and higher energies in such a manner that the Christ is born. This is a very occult statement. Very occult statement. Let's read this again, because I'm just beginning to realize how occult this is. Okay, so it is the seventh ray which restores order within the astral consciousness, and on the mental plane, it is this influence which produces creativity, which of course is a representation of the higher in the lower. The organizing of the life and the bringing together within the head of the lower and higher energies in such a manner that the Christ is born. He's giving us a hint here. At the first initiation, the birth of the Son is occurring phenomenally within the head. Maybe certain of the head centers are ignited, possibly, or the bringing together of spirit and matter will produce the Son, light in the head. The phenomenal aspect of that. So let's just say that within the head, the first initiation is reflected in the phenomenology. This latter point we shall consider in some detail when we take up the significance of the initiations. We shall then find the relationship between the pituitary body and the pineal gland is involved. So that's the hint, isn't it? The pituitary body represents the personality. The pineal gland represents the soul. When the two come together, light is born. Vulcan represents here's another way of looking at it. Vulcan represents the will. The Venus represents the soul. The Alta Major Center represents the personality. When the three are brought together, when these three centers unite, then the magnetic energy goes forth. The eye of Shiva, the light in the center of the head, is born, the single eye. So we're going to learn a lot more about what goes on in the brain and the etheric brain, because under the seventh ray, these different parts of our constitution will be brought together and create a light demonstration. Okay, we're almost there. Finally, finally? Okay, finally, he says, it is the seventh ray which in the initiatory process between the first and second initiations, a long time, enables the initiate in his physical plane life to demonstrate a developing sense of order and organization. During this long period between the first and second initiation, bringing the life into regulation, order, and organization, to express consciously and increasingly a desire to help his fellow men, in a practical way, I would say, and thereby establish relationship with them and make his life creative in many ways. So, at the first degree, you get a big dose of the seventh ray, and it keeps on working through you, even though you're beginning to undertake at a certain point, following the sixth ray as you prepare for the second initiation. It sounds like many wonderful things will emerge because of this ray. Bring order and organization to the physical plane life. All these factors are embryonic in his nature, but he now begins to consciously lay the foundation for future initiatory work. Now, is foundation good in relation to the seventh ray? Is the seventh ray useful at building a foundation? Absolutely. The foundation of the right pattern, right relationship between all the many factors, and it will contribute to the integration of the personality as well. The physical disciplines are at this time of great importance. The though their value is frequently overemphasized and their effect is not always good, because people get overly obsessed, with the physical disciplines and they forget the higher disciplines. The relationships established and fostered are sometimes of small value. This is how it is, unfortunately, at the moment, owing to the disciple usually being self-centered and thus lacking from ignorance and lack of discrimination, complete purity of motive. Nevertheless, the changes brought about by the influence of this ray become increasingly effective life to life, life to life, from life to life. So we will have better relationships, we will have better creativity, we will have better order, there will be an orientation towards service, all of these things brought into practical expression by the seventh ray. Okay, the disciple's relation to the hierarchy, the reorganizing of his life on the physical plane, and his growing effort to demonstrate the esoteric value of white magic will become more and more vital, etheric term, until he is ready for the second initiation. So in this chapter, in this section, DK has just taken us from the first to the second initiation, talking about all that the seventh ray will give us and all the improvements in the individual initiate's life which will occur over that very long period when he is building himself up for the first really significant entering the stream initiation at the time of the second degree. Are there any thoughts? Obviously, this stuff is fairly easy to understand, isn't it? It's very practical. We're talking about the seventh ray, which means it's practical. You know how seventh ray people are. They don't have time for all that wool gathering in the higher realm if you just want to stay there. They say, whatever you do in the abstract sense, you better make it real. This is how the seventh ray people operate. They want to bring heaven to earth, and some people just want to stay in heaven. I don't know. I think it's worth rereading. I think it's very beautiful, very promising. And, it's about relating soul and personality and bringing together heaven and earth and the higher energies with the lower and helping the higher ethers come into the lower life and basically regenerating. Uranian, seventh ray, regenerating all of human life. In other words, born again. Born anew, a new generation, a new spiritual generation. So we're in the midst of this right now, and actually these Scandinavian countries have a lot of seventh ray. Probably you've noticed. Of course, you probably noticed it in rules and regulations and high taxes, but there are also other things. Russia, too, has the seventh ray soul. Yes, Britta, yes. Reforming Uranus. Yes. Yes. Does this mean the development of humanity will accelerate? I think so. I think definitely so. If we are successful in avoiding the very evident dangers, like they say, the clear and present danger, we will be on the brink of an acceleration of human understanding and illumination and expression such as never been seen before. In other words, and just think, okay, look, it's been how many millions of years, and now the Christ and his hierarchy will be walking among us in a known physical plane center, which will be the office of the Christ in a known center. And in the certain major cities, the masters will be placed and visible. Their disciples will be gathered around them. The rulers of the country, the directors of the country, will be consulting them for wise action. The presence of the hierarchy in the Christ will mean an unparalleled acceleration in human progress. We just have to get over this very bumpy, rocky, rapid-filled passage that we're in right now, when the sixth ray and all the forces of reaction, hearkening back to the previous solar system, want to stop this progress. It's called the last-ditch fight of materialism. It means the last-ditch fight to make the lower three subplanes more real than the etheric planes. The seventh ray wants to come in and make the four ethers visible and say we really live an ethereal life and matter is energy and you are an energy unit and you're not just what you see. And the old method wants to keep us confined in the lower matter coming from the previous solar system with all of the instinctual third-ray tendencies. So that's the fight that's happening right now. This fly really loves me. They say that a fly can be the enlightener, so I'm hoping. Many a sage has been enlightened by a fly. This is what I hear. Yeah, so I think acceleration indeed. Well, I'll tell you what. So we finished that. We have finished the first initiation. Okay? It's good? And now we're going to see whether there's anybody out there that would like to add any thought. We can give them the opportunity to do so if they wish to speak. Anyway, look, we've covered a lot of ground today. We have covered today the discussion of behind the group there stands the door, before them opens out the way. We started there. We completed that section with all of its implications about the future and the truly initiate group, which we strive to become one fine day. And we entered this discussion, very practical discussion, of the first initiation. I think that's how I will operate in this class. Instead of reading the second part of the book sequentially, I will choose high points in the second part of the book, but we will read the first part of the book sequentially, as one rule leads to another. And then, of course, we have to think, I know that, and I'm getting to be old and lacking energy. However, I want to say that if you hope to really put this under your belt by coming only once a year, it will require working until the year 2026 in order to finish the job. And I would encourage you to think of the possible drawbacks of such a plan. So I think the group itself is being faced with a decision, which of course I know is somewhat a financial decision, as to how often we will meet. From the spiritual point of view, there's no question in my mind it should be every 6 months. From the financial point of view, I know that every year would seem more comfortable, but you won't get the job done, and neither will I. So you'll have to debate that among yourselves and see what you want. Of course, we have the whole issue, which I don't discuss now, but another issue which needs help and amelioration. So many things can determine whether we continue or don't. And I would just like us to use all of our spiritual power to make sure that we can in every way. And you know what I mean. All right, friends, I'm going to pull the plug on my headset. And unfortunately, I have a computer which is not the best computer for this. But it'll have to do. I'll make it as loud as I can, hopefully not producing terrible distortion. And I'll give our friends who are out there in the etheric Aquarian world the chance to say something if they would like to. I'll look for your hands. If you're awake, you may speak, and if you're asleep, you may speak as well. I do it all the time. Okay, Celeste, I've got you here. Hi, Celeste, in New York.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, Celeste.
I want to thank you for your discussion of the seventh ray and the fourth ray and the arts. That's all very exciting and thrilling and useful.
Celeste is a singer and a teacher of music, so she, okay. Yeah, right, exactly. It's marvelous to anticipate it. I want to have the chance to sing in some of Bach's new oratorios.
Me too.
Exactly. It'll be amazing time. So we have to look forward with optimism to that kind of amazing unfoldment. DK calls it the wonder of the new age. The wonder, eye hath not seen, ear hath not heard, okay? What the planetary logos has planned, and he calls it the wonder of the new age. So he just says we can't even conceive what it will be. So let us look forward with optimism towards the great beauty that is coming. Right, Celeste?
Thank you.
Appreciate your thought. Thanks so much. Okay. Anybody else would like to speak? You have the opportunity. I'm trying to look for your hand. If it is raised, you are welcome. Don't be shy. You can speak if you like. Okay, we have, Elena is here. Elena? Wait a second. Elena, do you have your headset? Hold on. Elena.
I have.
You have your headset. Okay. Elena.
Can you hear me?
Indeed. You are not
Thank
one of the, you are not one of the people who usually has trouble being heard.
Okay, I just would like to bring some points which have not been mentioned in relation to the first initiation.
Okay.
And that is the third ray plays very important role in preparation for the first initiation.
Correct. Yes.
Where he says that usually we find the personality on the third ray. And I see also, Libra in relation to not only to the third ray, but to the Uranus and the seventh ray.
Yes.
So you see, we have the 3-7 ray, which are bringing the physical and the etheric planes also together.
Indeed. Indeed so. Indeed.
So
Yes.
the important point is that at the first initiation we have anchoring of two very important energies, and that is first the buddhi, the buddhi,
Yes.
and also the sacrifice petals start to be activated, and so anchoring of the will. So
Yes.
these are two very important energies which are anchored at the first initiation. What I would like personally to clarify from you, or not clarify, but maybe add some view, that we are told that the 4 head centers will be functioning at the first initiation. And so obviously also the 7th petal, which, it's in a process of unfoldment there.
Yes. Yes.
Because the 7th petal is related, to the first initiation. But what I would like you to maybe make some more comments about the head centers.
Well, I think we should look on page 170 of Cosmic Fire, which is, he talks here about man partially controlled by the ego, advanced man, the head, heart, throat, and head, that is the 4 lesser centers and their synthesis, the alta center. And this is up to the first initiation. Then we start adding additional head centers. Now there's so much here. I think that by the time we reach the 3rd initiation, we have all 7 head centers, and I wouldn't be surprised if at the 2nd initiation we have 6 head centers. Now, where they're located, I don't want to hazard a guess on that. Some people say it's within the head, some people say it's above the head, but we do know that there is a reflection. Let's just say I think they are ruled by Vulcan. And I think that these 7 head centers have a lower correspondence in many of the other centers in the body. And when I was looking at this healing techniques for the 1st and 2nd rays, he uses nothing but numbers. And he tells us that in order to be a healer, it is these centers in the head that have to be activated and not the other chakras. So it seems to me that as we begin to develop the spiritual will, that is when these particular centers under Vulcan begin to go into the activation. And I would say 5 centers for the 1st initiation, 6 for the second, and 7 for the third. Farther than that, I would just want to do some research. And I also think that if we look at the qualities of the sacrifice petals and we try to cultivate them in our life and express them, that will go a long way towards stimulating the will sufficiently to activate those particular head centers. Other than that, it's about a 10-hour discussion.
Okay, I have a final question to the head centers. Am I right to presume or hypothesize, or whatever you can call it, that the 7 head centers does not include the 3 major head centers, and that is the crown, ajna, and the altar major?
In my opinion, that is correct. I think it's a Kabbalistic setup where you have the higher 3 over the lower 7. That is what I am pursuing at the moment. Okay, wait a second. Britta has a comment. Yes, Britta?
Yes, are you thinking about the centers in the Ajna center? You know, the Ajna center is divided in the upper and the lower.
Yeah.
And in the upper part of the Ajna, there are 7 centers correlating to the major centers.
Okay, are we looking at that book about Laya Yoga? Is that what we're talking about? Okay, so you're saying usually when I think of the Ajna Center, I think of it having 4 particular divisions. So you are saying that within the Ajna Center there are 7? Okay, about that I don't know too much, but I do know that there is a book on Laya Yoga which shows the centers related to the Ajna Center going up the front of the head just the way the Tibetan hats go, symbolizing those particular centers. That I'd have to discuss with you. This whole area, look, you know, Assagioli asked the Tibetan, tell me about the head center, and he says it's totally esoteric. There's so little I can possibly say about it. So we have to piece these things together. But I think a Kabbalistic formulation of the 3 centers that you spoke about, which is the Alta, the Ajna, and the highest head center, are not part of the other 7 head centers. That is my impression at this moment. Okay, Elena.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll talk more. We'll talk more. Okay. We will. Okay. Very good. Thank you. Andrew, I have you here. Andrew in
Hi, Michael. Can you hear me?
Are you in Sydney or Melbourne? I think you're in Sydney, aren't you?
I'm in Sydney. Yes, I'm in Sydney.
I've been saying Melbourne. Pardon me. Anyway,
that's okay.
Sydney,
I'm really a citizen of the whole world.
Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Forgive me if I've already, if you've already mentioned this in your book on the monad, but I was actually quite taken by the description you read out yesterday on the monad, and because I've also been reading a bit of Leibniz or Leibniz.
Yes.
I got a real insight into the monad that I would like to share with people. I hope that it is useful and beneficial.
Insight into the monad.
Leibniz, when he writes of the monad, he says it's a simple, which means that it has no parts. That is a unity, and you mentioned that it means one.
Yes.
And I was just thinking about what that would mean in terms of there cannot be any weakness or any change. There's no way that it can be confronted or opposed in the sense that any which would always be victor in any sort of confrontation with other entities. Basically, you mentioned it was infallible.
I would qualify that. Actually, Andrew, we may have a little bit of problem with the connection here because some of what you just said kind of faded out. Are you hearing me okay?
Yeah, perfectly.
Okay. A few of your sentences at the end were a little distorted. I want to qualify what I say about the monad in the following way. I want to discriminate between the powers of the monad, which I do not think are a simple, by simple like a noun, a simple thing, and the essence of the monad, which I think is infallible, unique, and the only thing that exists. So I differentiate between the kind of possessions that the spirit has on its own plane, which are obviously multiple, with the essence. I differentiate that from the essence of the monad, which is one and the same in all beings. That is my take on it at the moment. Can you hear me, Andrew?
Okay.
Okay. Yes.
Yes. That makes a lot of sense. I have to really read more of what you've written, because it's really very, very enlightening, very useful.
Well, thank you. And
the other
changed my mind a bit too. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The other thing that I really wanted to share was the idea that every word that DK uses, as Eleanor says, is full of meaning, and and it's optimized. It's actually the maximal sort of number of meanings, and you couldn't choose a better word in anything that he sort of writes. And when you mentioned that on page 32 of Rays and Initiates, that there's a beating upon the personality as the personality beating.
Yeah, beating. Yes.
And it conjured in my mind the idea of when two sounds are out of phase, like if you've got a guitar and you're tuning your guitar, often when you're tuning the strings there's a beating sound until you get the tuning perfect, and then there's a perfect pure note.
Exactly. Very good analogy. A very good analogy.
And
yes.
And it just made me sort of aware of the idea in terms of in two-dimensional space, the beating looks like a moya pattern. You know those patterns that are made by.
Uh-oh, Andrew. You're fading in and out there. I'm not sure about that pattern of which you are speaking.
Yeah.
But anyway, you can send it sometime, the picture of the pattern.
Yes.
And that will help.
I'll do that. Yes.
Yes, I think these are
I'll do that.
All good thoughts, Andrew, and I thank you for your contribution to this afternoon's thought. There's a lot more to say.
Thank you.
I know, but the musical analogy is very interesting, how when two notes are out of tune, notes which are called beats appear until we get it all together. So that's
until we get alignment.
Until we get an exact mathematical relationship, and that is why the fourth ray is called the ray of mathematical exactitude, because only with mathematical exactitude can there be true harmonization. Okay, thank you, Andrew.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
You bet. We haven't got much time, so I'm just going to, is there anybody else who would like to speak? It would have to be relatively briefly, because the group here will remind me they have to eat. What time did they start? At 6 o'clock? Oh, really? Well, so just be patient. All right. Johanna in Holland? Johanna, hi.
Yes, I will be very, very short. I only will have to say there is a lot of work to do, and let's do it.
Oh, that sounds good. That's good. Let's do it. There's a lot of work to do. We have our work cut out for us. Thank you, Johanna. Thank you for being so steady and attending all these days. Appreciate that very much. Okay, a lot of work to do.
I don't think I will not be there tomorrow the whole day, so I say goodbye now and wish you all the best for the rest.
Thank you, Johanna. Thank you very much. Yes. Okay, let's see. Is there anybody else that would like to speak here? You'd be welcome to. We have just a little time. Okay. What time is it in New York? Oh, it's about 11. What time is it? 6 hours from New York? That's not too bad. 12 o'clock noon. That's not too bad. Okay. Okay, well, thank you, folks, for offering your thought. And Catherine, I see you're here online, too, and you were here during the day. Nice to see you in two places. Okay, so then Goodbye to Andrew, Catherine, Celeste, Elena, Francis in New Mexico, Johanna, Leslie, Lynn, Mauricio, and Sam. Very good. So, friends, let us just close this afternoon's work. Tomorrow we'll see, can we do the second initiation? We will see. Okay. I'm going to put in the headset once again, and we'll do the mantram of the new group of world servers. Okay. Elena's great with the particular questions, you know. Now we're going to have to talk for 10 hours. I can feel this coming. Okay. Okay, wait a second. Something's wrong. Have I made a, well, look, you know it, and we're just going to have to say it whether I can get it on the line or not. Okay. Power. Whoops, that's not power. Okay, we got it. Very good. We've got it. Okay, friends, let's do our closing mantram. All right. May the power of the One Life pour through the group of all true servers. May the love of the One Soul characterize the lives of all who seek to aid the Great Ones. May we fulfill our part in the one work through self-forgetfulness, harmlessness, and right speech. Okay, good, and thank you. What time do we meet back here, Lona? 7 o'clock. Okay, we'll do our best. 7 o'clock then. Okay, and farewell all of you out there, and tomorrow at the same time, 7:45 Danish time, 5:45 GMT, and that will be our last day, and we will finish Rule 1 the best we can. All right, thank you, and until then.